It was almost 3 in the morning, a lonely stretch of back road in rural Pennsylvania. The kind of road that just eats up the miles and spits you out somewhere you didn't mean to go. That's where Mike, a long-haul trucker, first saw her. She was just standing there, barefoot by the rusty guardrail, a ghostly figure against the blackness of the trees. She was young, wearing an old-fashioned sundress. It looked ancient, stained with dirt, like it had been buried and then clawed back up from the earth. But it was her eyes that really stopped him. They were completely, unnervingly black. No whites, no iris, not even a reflection from his headlights. Just 2 deep, empty voids. He slowed the rig to a crawl and rolled down the window. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp leaves. "You all right, miss?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. She didn't startle. She just turned her head slowly, and in the softest, most polite voice he'd ever heard, she gave her name as Susan. She asked if he could possibly give her a lift. "Just 10 miles," she said, "down the old fire road, to the farmhouse with the yellow light." Against his better judgment, Mike unlocked the passenger door. Every trucker has heard the stories, the warnings about roadside phantoms, but she looked so small, so harmless. And besides, it was just 10 miles. The moment she climbed into the cab, the air turned ice cold. He could feel the warmth drain out of the space, replaced by a deep, penetrating chill. Mike shivered, blaming it on the October night, the open window. He pulled the heavy door shut and put the truck back in gear. He turned onto the fire road, a narrow lane he'd never noticed before. The pavement quickly gave way to gravel, and the trees pressed in close, their branches scraping against the sides of his rig. On either side, endless fields stretched out, but they weren't filled with corn or wheat. They were blanketed, mile after mile, with black-eyed Susans. The flowers swayed in a breeze he couldn't feel, their dark centers like a million tiny eyes watching him pass. It was strange. Those flowers had no business blooming this late in the year. Susan sat perfectly still beside him. In all the time she was in the cab, she never blinked. Not once. She started talking, her voice quiet, almost a whisper, but it filled the cab, drowning out the engine's drone. She spoke of a boy she used to love, back in the day. She described slow dancing with him under harvest moons, the scratch of his wool sweater against her cheek. She told Mike she was waiting for him to come back home. There was a terrible accident, she explained, way back in 1957. Her voice was like a melody, sweet and hypnotic. Mike found himself leaning in, listening, the miles melting away unnoticed. He tried the radio, hoping some music might break the spell, but every station he turned to dissolved into the same faint, tinny lullaby, a sad, old song. He noticed her fingers, long and pale, were just brushing the dial. He hadn't even seen her move. Just as she'd promised, about 10 miles down the road, a single light appeared through the trees. A farmhouse, old and sagging, its porch light a sickly, flickering yellow. It looked like it was about to give up and plunge the house into darkness forever. Mike pulled the truck to a stop, the headlights cutting a path through the overgrown yard. Susan turned to him, smile spread across her face, a smile that felt way too wide, stretching her features in a way that wasn't human. "You remind me of someone I used to know," she whispered, her black eyes seeming to pull him in. "You have a good night, Susan," Mike managed to say, his voice a little shaky. She opened the door and stepped out onto the gravel path. He watched her walk toward the house, a pale figure gliding over the ground without making a single sound. And then, the truck's heavy passenger door slammed shut on its own. The sound echoed in the silent night. Mike's heart was hammering against his ribs. He didn't wait to see her go inside. He threw the truck in gear and peeled away, gravel spitting from under the tires. A few hundred yards down the road, his curiosity got the better of him. He glanced in the rearview mirror, just for a second, and his blood ran cold. She was still there in the passenger seat. Her reflection stared back at him, humming that same lullaby, her impossible black eyes fixed straight ahead. He screamed and slammed on the brakes, the rig skidding to a halt. He spun around, ready to confront her, to demand what she wanted, but the seat was empty. The cab was empty. All that was left was the bone-deep chill and the faint, sweet scent of wildflowers. Mike drove all night, fueled by coffee and raw fear, not stopping until the sun came up. But he couldn't shake it. The image of her was burned into his mind. For 3 nights, he couldn't sleep. He kept hearing that lullaby, kept feeling that chill. He had to know. He had to prove to himself that he'd just been tired, that he'd imagined it all. He drove back. He found the fire road, the fields of black-eyed flowers. He parked and, with a heavy flashlight in his trembling hand, walked up to the old farmhouse. It was a time capsule. The front door was unlocked, hanging ajar. Inside, dust lay thick on everything. A calendar on the wall was turned to October 1957. A rotary phone lay on the floor, its receiver off the hook, and there, freshly carved into the wooden front door, was a single, perfect black-eyed Susan. He crept through the silent rooms, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. He found the bedroom. It was sparse, a simple bed, a dusty wardrobe. On the dresser was a cracked, oval mirror. He shined his light on it and saw his own reflection wide-eyed and pale. He was alone in the room. He knew he was. But as he stared, he felt it, a gentle pressure. the sensation of arms circling his waist from behind, a cold, soft embrace. He didn't dare turn around. The next morning, Mike's truck was found. It was parked in the middle of that field of flowers, engine still idling. The radio was on, stuck between stations, playing nothing but static and, faintly just barely audible beneath it, a lullaby. The police found only one set of tracks leading away from the truck. They were small, barefoot, and they disappeared a few feet into the endless sea of black-eyed Susans. So if you're ever driving those lonely back roads, late at night, and you see a pale girl in an old dress waving you down, no matter how lost or tired you are, no matter how politely she asks for a ride, just keep driving. Some rides aren't meant for the living, and some destinations only open their doors when they've already chosen their next guest. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more chills. Stay safe out there. There's a stretch of old Highway 6, tucked somewhere between Council Bluffs and Des Moines, that the locals have a special name for. They call it the Black Ribbon. It's a lonely, flat piece of road cutting straight through endless miles of corn. And if you find yourself on that particular stretch at exactly 2:11 in the morning, something strange will happen. Your radio, no matter the station, will suddenly cut to pure crackling static. It'll hold for exactly 4 seconds. And then, as clear as a bell on a quiet Sunday morning, a little girl's voice will come through the speakers. She asked just one simple question. Are we almost home yet, Daddy? Now, the chilling part isn't just a question. It's that every single driver who has ever heard it, from seasoned truckers to late-night travelers, swears on their life they were completely and utterly alone in their vehicle. They call her the Cornfield Girl. The first officially recorded incident happened back in 1983. A state trooper, doing his late-night patrol, spotted a semi-truck swerving erratically. He pulled the driver over, a long hauler who was shaking so badly he could barely speak. The trucker frantically insisted that a child had been sitting in his sleeper berth for the last 30 miles, just watching him. The trooper, skeptical but doing his due diligence, went to check the cab. Of course, it was empty, but a cold shiver ran down his spine when he placed his hand on the mattress in the sleeper. It was warm, with a distinct indentation, the perfect outline of a small body. And that wasn't all. Someone, or something, had drawn a crude stick-figure family in the thick layer of dust on the dashboard. A mom, a dad, and a little girl holding a stuffed rabbit. Since that night, the story has repeated itself dozens of times, becoming a grim legend among those who drive the Black Ribbon. The details are always uncannily the same. The same mile marker, always precisely at 2:11 a.m., and always that same heartbreaking question. Modern technology hasn't helped solve the mystery. Dash cams that are running at that exact moment record nothing but a screen full of glitching static. The voice isn't just on the radio either. Truckers say it broadcasts simultaneously across every channel on their CB radios, a ghostly, shared experience for anyone unlucky enough to be in range. Some drivers report other sensory details that make it even more terrifying. Just before the static hits, they say the air in their cab fills with an impossible scent, the sweet, earthy smell of fresh-cut hay mixed with the clean, innocent fragrance of baby shampoo. For years, the rule was simple. If you hear her, you ignore her. You turn up your own music, you grip the wheel tighter, and you just keep driving. No one knew what would happen if you answered. But in August of 1997, a trucker named Ray Delacroix found out. Ray was a veteran driver, but he was pushing his limits. He was hauling a refrigerated load of bacon out of Omaha, already on his third day with barely any sleep. He was exhausted, half delirious, running on nothing but coffee and sheer willpower. So when his radio crackled to static right on schedule, and that familiar, clear little voice asked, "Are we almost home yet, Daddy?" Ray didn't think. He was so tired, so lost in the hypnotic rhythm of the road, that he just answered. He muttered into the empty space of his cab, "Yeah, honey, just a few more minutes." The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The temperature inside his refrigerated trailer, which was set to a steady 34 degrees, plummeted. His gauges showed it dropped 30 degrees in under 10 seconds, a physical impossibility. A thick layer of frost began to crawl across his windshield, but it was forming on the inside, obscuring his view of the road. His GPS went completely haywire. It showed his truck icon stuck in a loop, replaying the same quarter-mile of deserted cornfield over and over again for what felt like an eternity. The screen said he was moving, but the truck's odometer never ticked over. 43 minutes he was trapped in this digital and physical purgatory. Finally, in a surge of adrenaline and terror, Ray slammed on the brakes. The truck screeched to a halt in the middle of the highway. He looked out at the cornfields flanking the road, stalks standing 10 feet tall like a silent, watching army. As he stared, a section of the corn directly in front of his truck parted. Not like it was pushed aside by the wind, but like a pair of giant curtains being drawn open. And there she was, standing barefoot in the pale glow of his headlights, was a little girl in a faded yellow dress. She was holding a ragged, well-loved stuffed rabbit, one of its button eyes hanging by a thread and one ear completely missing. But it was her face that made Ray's blood run cold. Where her eyes should have been, there were just two hollow, dark voids. as black and empty as the starless sky above the fields. She didn't run. She didn't float. She just walked, with a slow, deliberate pace, straight up to the driver's side door of his rig. She didn't try to open it. She just reached up with a tiny hand and placed the tattered rabbit on the bottom step of his cab. Then she looked up, her featureless face aimed right at him, and she whispered, her voice no longer coming from the radio, but from right outside his window. "You said we were almost home," and just like that, she was gone. The corn snapped shut behind her, leaving no trace she had ever been there. The road was empty. The night was silent again. Ray's rig was discovered the next morning, parked neatly on the shoulder of the highway. The engine was cold. The doors were locked from the inside. The state troopers who found it said everything looked normal, except for one thing. Sitting on the driver's seat, right where Ray should have been, was the stuffed rabbit. But it was different now. The missing ear had been sewn back on, crudely, with thick, coarse black thread. Pinned to the rabbit's chest with a rusted old diaper pin was a Polaroid picture. The photo had clearly been taken from inside the cab, looking towards the driver's seat. It showed Ray Delacroix slumped over the steering wheel, seemingly fast asleep, but he wasn't alone. Sitting right there in the passenger seat, bathed in the faint green light of the dashboard, was the little girl from the road. She was smiling directly at the camera, a wide, joyful smile. And in the picture you could see her eyes. They weren't hollow voids anymore. They were Ray's eyes. Ray Delacroix was never seen or heard from again. The official report lists him as a missing person. Another case gone cold. But the truckers, they know what happened. They know Ray kept his promise. He took her home. The story doesn't end there, though it's changed. Now, every year on the anniversary of that terrifying August night, drivers who pass that same mile marker at 2:11 a.m. report something new. The static still comes, but the question is gone. Instead, they feel a slight movement, like the curtain to their sleeper berth has just been brushed aside. The cab still fills with the scent of hay and baby shampoo, and then, a tiny voice, no longer asking a question, but filled with a quiet contentment, whispers from the darkness behind them, "Thank you for bringing me home, Daddy." So, if you ever find yourself driving that lonely black ribbon west of Des Moines, long after the sun has set, and your watch ticks over to 2:11 a.m., listen closely. If your radio fills with static, and a little girl's voice cuts through the noise, whatever you do, don't answer. Grip the wheel, stare straight ahead, and just keep driving. Because some little girls never quite make it all the way home, and they're always looking for a daddy who will keep his promises. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the dark side of the road. Stay safe out there.